안녕 친구들. I hope you've been well. I know some of you are probably like, oh my gosh, she's on YouTube again. Anyway, this is my last week of vacation. I ended up having one extra week of vacation before my fall term started, and I thought I would have my afternoon coffee and do a little bit of vlogging, recapping with you all. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into episode 18. Hold on. All right, I just got thirsty all of a sudden. All right, so Goo Family Book, episode 18, we left off with Kangchi showing up in, he doesn't know it, but his mother's room at the 100 Years Inn. And so episode 18 picks up from there. And he goes in, and then they have this conversation where she asks, are you being chased by my men? Because they could hear her guards outside asking if everything was okay in her room and so on. And it's just kind of weird that the mom doesn't make that connection that Kangchi's definitely being hunted by her men, because she just implicitly trusts when Kangchi says, I'm not really a bad guy, it's just there's been a misunderstanding or what have you. And so she tells her guards, I'm all right, everything's okay. And then Kangchi ends up, of course, sagging with relief, and then they end up having this conversation. And Kangchi gives her tips on what things to eat while she's there, and she asks him about his name, like what is his name. And he tells her Kangchi, and he talks about how the name actually refers to having been abandoned in a river. Well, anyway, so as Kangchi leaves, though, in his rush, one of the pieces of the map that he had stolen from the ninja guys, I think there were 8, one of them drops to the floor, and she happens to pick it up, and she makes a connection that Kangchi has actually stolen her map. Well, afterwards, Kangchi makes his way outside safely, and he finds Yeol, who is on the lookout, wondering where Kangchi is, and it's really cute, the interactions that they have. You guys already know. I love the interactions between Yeol and Kangchi, but anyway, so they talk, and then when they turn around, because Kwon and Tessa are there, I don't know how I feel about this, but Kangchi is holding on to Yeol's hand. And Tessa, of course, sees it, and for all intents and purposes, we know that Tessa is, still her fiance. And of course, Kwon sees that, and he just kind of laughs in disbelief, kind of, or not so much laughs, but he just kind of, I don't know how else to, maybe scoffing, I don't know, but he just kind of goes, like just in disbelief. But anyway, so they end up making their way out of the 100 Years Inn, Kangchi holding on to Yeol's hands. And that's really, I thought, a very blatant, symbolic way of saying that they are together now. But anyway, what happens is the way they get out of the inn, I thought, was quite clever and quite comical. Remember that I guess, I don't want to say that they're prostitutes or brothel ladies, but you know how the women were there to entertain the guests at the 100-Year Inn? Well, they're now about to leave, and Cho Go-neung learns that his business partner, the lady's, one of her maps has been stolen, or something of value from her has been stolen, and so he gets his men, they body search all of the women, and you hear these indignant, cries of outrage and such. But they don't find anything, and then they let them leave. Well, what's really cool is that as the women are leaving, Tessa gives Kangchi's father the go-ahead, and then you see Kwon, Yeol, and Kangchi join the crowd of Kisengs as they're leaving, all dressed in Kiseng, like girls' outfits. So I thought that was kind of funny, clever, what have you. But anyway, they make it to the brothel house, and that's where Lee Sun-shin comes with Tam Pyongjun, and they end up having this discussion, debriefing, if you will. And Kang-chi at that point displays for them the map, and they realize, oh, this is definitely much more serious than they anticipated. And Kang-chi realizes, though, that one piece of his map is missing, and so he kind of lets them know that. Now, when he returns to the room that they're going to be staying at in the brothel, it turns out to be Chungjo's room. And it's really cute the way they take off their hanboks and stuff like that. But there's definitely this strain between among them. And Yeol gets a little bit upset that Kang-chi lost one of the pieces of maps. And it was so funny, this little scene, because Kang-chi's like, I lost it when I was talking to this lady. And Kwon's like, oh, she was pretty, huh? And then Kang-chi's like, no, it wasn't that. And then Yeol's like, was she pretty? And Kang-chi's like, no, it wasn't that. And then Kwon said she was pretty. And then Kang-chi's like, no, it wasn't that. And I just love how Yeol's, her little jealous streak comes out. And so, anyway. Long story short, though, the next day they leave to return back to the training center. But that's not before Woi-sun notices that they are staying there. So, what happened? I'm trying to think what else happened, though, in that interim, because I saw this episode kind of, in pieces. So, that happens, and then Kang-chi actually ends up talking. Oh, before they leave for the training center, Kang-chi goes to the headmistress, and they end up talking, and she ends up talking to him about what had happened and such. And then the headmistress makes this comment to Kang-chi saying, "Oh, now that I see you, you do remind me of your mother." And Kang-chi says, "You know my mother." And so she ends up drawing this like character or some sort of figure, and she says, "This is for you to figure out. Once you figure this out, it'll give you an idea of who you are, or your mother, or something to that effect." I can't remember specifically, but anyway, while Kang-chi's there, and then he makes his way back to Chungjo's room where Yeol is and things like that. This is the next morning before they return to the training center. Chungjo ends up talking with Yeol because Chungjo finds out from the head servant at the brothel the background story of what happened between Kang-chi's mom and Kang-chi's dad, and how Yeol's father is involved. So Chungjo asks Yeol in the privacy, or what they think is the privacy of her room, whether Yeol knew about the fact that her father had killed Kang-chi's father. And basically the whole secret kind of comes out, and Yeol says, "I don't think you are the type of person, you're the person I'm supposed to have this conversation with." And so she turns to leave, and she opens the door, and to her surprise, there's Kang-chi. And he's just stunned, and he's like, "Yeol, is this true?" And Yeol just can't say anything, and she just walks out or runs away. And then so Kang-chi, asks Chungjo, "Is this true?" And Chungjo's like, "What did you hear?" Or, "From where did you hear?" And Kang-chi says, "From the start." And Chungjo says, "I'm really sorry. I never intended for you to find out this way." But anyway, so what happens is Yeol is outside and she's crying, and then Kwon comes in and he's like, "What's going on? What's wrong?" And she says to him, "Kang-chi's never going to look at me again," and all of this stuff. Well, in that interim, what happens is Kang-chi ends up going to the training center without them to talk with Tam Pyongjun, and while he's there, Tam Pyongjun ends up giving him the sword with which he had killed his father, Kang-chi's father. And so we hear, all we see at that point is Kang-chi, asking if it's true that he killed his father and so on, right? Well, Yeol finds out, because remember they went separately. Yeol finds out that Kang-chi has gone to the training center, and she's just freaking out, thinking, "Oh my gosh, Kang-chi's going to take revenge on my father or something." And so she runs, and when she runs, she sees Song out in the front yard sweeping, and so she asks, "Have you seen Kang-chi?" And he's like, "Yeah, Kang-chi, Hyung just went up to talk with the Sabomnim, the master, right?" Well, before she can even do anything, she sees Kang-chi come out, and then she looks at his hands, and they've been bloodied. right? And so Kwon suspects the worst, and he and Song go running up to the master's office. And then there's this very pregnant pause where Yo is just looking at Kang Chi, and she doesn't really say anything. And then Kang Chi's just looking at her. And then as he's about to say Yo, she literally just walks right by him. She brushes right by him without saying a single word, and then she goes to see her father to see if he's okay. Well, when Kang-chi realizes that type of rejection, he thinks back to his Kumyo, Papa Kumyo's comment about how people cannot be trusted. Human people cannot be trusted because they will eventually betray you. And so Yoel goes in and she finds that her father is totally fine. And then on the desk, all she sees are these two broken pieces of that long sword. And then that's when the camera flashes back to Kang-chi's, the remaining part of Kang-chi's conversation with Tam Pyung-jun, and which was basically, the business of the elders, leave it at, leave it with you guys. Don't try to push whatever happened that many years ago onto us, because Kang-chi had found out from Tam Pyung-jun directly the whole story of how his mother had betrayed his father, and how Tam Pyung-jun had killed Papa Kumyo because Papa Kumyo had killed about 15 of his men, and he was about to kill the mom, and that's why Tam Pyung-jun had killed him. Well, Kang-chi then takes his bare hands and he snaps that sword, and then he flings it onto the table, and he says, don't try to push the past onto us. And that's when he walked out. And of course, as he walks out, he sees Yeol, and to realize that she suspected the worst of him must have been a very telling blow. But anyway, so Yeol realizes, oh my gosh, not only did I betray him by not telling him about my father, but I totally rejected him without even hearing his side of the story. So she runs outside. She finds Kang-chi, and Kang-chi's kind of far away, and he's just holding his hand up, and the Kumyo fireflies are doing their little healing magic. And then as he turns and sees her, he walks by and it basically repeats the brush off that she had given him earlier. And so Yeol is just devastated, and she's like, what do I do now? What do I do? And as she is just reeling in her devastation, you see Kang-chi's arms come around her, and then he tells her, don't ever do that again. Don't ever pretend that you don't, know me like a stranger. Don't ever keep secrets from me and things like that. And then Yeol turns around and she says, I'm so sorry. The reason why I did that was because I was so sorry. I didn't know how to tell you. And that's understandable. Her father did kill his father. I guess then initiating the circumstances of his growing up as an orphan and all of those things. So, anyway, they decide to, patch things up, of course. Well, Cho Gun-ung then learns from the lady and her head guy, her right-hand man, that the man who stole the maps, or the map pieces, was Kang-chi. And so he, shockingly enough, recruits Wolson. That wasn't what was shocking. The thing that was shocking for me watching it was to realize that Wolson is actually dabbling in black magic herself, in the same way that Cho Gun-ung's right-hand man, Seo, was dabbling in black magic. And the reason why we know this is that later that evening, Kang-chi gets a summons, I guess, from Cheongjo. Her little maidservant comes and tells Kang-chi that her mistress is requesting his presence at the brothel. And so he goes, and he's having a drink with who he thinks is Cheongjo. And Cheongjo keeps supplying him this drink called Chihun drink, which is supposed to literally just render you senseless. And I think it's what they ended up feeding Cho Gun-ung that one time where they wanted to make him totally incapacitated. Remember when they went into his room in the 100-year Inn and such? Well, anyway, it takes about 5 drinks before Kang-chi gets drunk enough. And the whole thing is that the more you move, the drunker you get. And so the headmistress, when she finds out that Wolson has, tricked Kang-chi into drinking, she tells him don't move, right? Well, so the trick is that Wolson lures Kang-chi into the brothel on the pretense that she's Chungjo. And when Kangchi actually sits down to drink with her, he really does think that he's drinking with Chungjo, or is drinking or is receiving drinks from Chungjo. And we find out that the real Chungjo has gone to see Yeol at the training center. And so Kwon, who knows that Kangchi had just gone to the brothel to see Chungjo, is stunned, and then he bursts into the Yeol's room without so much as a nod, and he's like, Kangchi's over at the brothel meeting you. What are you doing here? And she's like, what do you mean? I didn't call for Kangchi at all and such. So that's kind of the situation. People at the training center now know that something's going on with Kangchi. At the brothel, we find out that Wolsan has joined, forces with Chogonung, perhaps as a way of getting back into his graces. She's dabbled in black magic so that Kangchi sees her as Chungju. She gets him drunk. The head mistress then sees Kangchi, and there's nothing that she can do, especially when Chogonung comes with his men to arrest Kangchi for theft. And so anyway, the episode ends though climactically because Kangchi's all chained and tied up, and then we have the lady, Kangchi's mom, come because she's been told that Kangchi has been caught. The thief of her maps has been caught, and so she kind of still, very boldly faces up to, Billy, you okay? Faces up to Chogonung, and she asks, this man is totally incapacitated, and yet why do you feel the need to chain him up? And Chogonung says, this man is not human. He's actually a monster, and we know this because, the drink, 2 cups should have killed him, and yet he's had 5, and he's still kind of like this. And then he has one of his henchmen take off the bracelet, and then Kangchi's like, no. And literally before her eyes, Kangchi, he howls, and then his eyes turn into that Kumyo eyes. And so, it's this very interesting situation where she's trying not to let on to Chogonung that she is Sawang, because they're still playing that game between the two of them. And then the horror of her realization that the son that she had been looking for is actually right in front of her, the one that she was inadvertently responsible for chaining up and things like that. So anyway, so that was episode 18. I apologize if the recap was a little bit discombobulated, disjointed in some respects. In terms of my musings, I hadn't seen episode 18 in over 2 months, I want to say. It feels like it's been about 2 months because Gu Family Book was just winding down right around my finals exam time in early June. And so I don't know whether it's because of the 2 months that had passed, but I wasn't as crazy about the episode as I had originally been in May and June. But I will say I did appreciate the character development still between Yeol and Kangchi, as well as just the mother-son dynamics that's now starting to develop in the series. And so my goal is between now and I guess October, when airs or gets broadcasted, to do at least one Gu Family Book recap per week. I have a little over a month. So I just got done. This is 18, so 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, right? I think there's 24 episodes. Yes. So I've got 6, so it should work out so that we'll be able to do the recap. So that is it. I am liking it. I don't know how they're gonna resolve this whole issue with Yeol and Teso's betrothal, and just a part of my heart just aches for poor Teso. He obviously adores Yeol, but there's nothing he can do. Yeol's heart is already attached to Kangchi, and of course is his best friend, and ugh. Anyway, that's it. I'm just gonna stop while I'm ahead, and then I will bid you goodbye. And then for those of you who are interested in watching The Master's Son, or Chugun의 태양, that is currently what I'm watching right now, and over on my blog I am recapping that. But what I wanted to do was actually do short weekly recaps of that as well. So you'll probably see that upload probably Friday or Saturdays of each week. So Once I stop filming this, I have like an hour left, so I'm gonna try to recap that as well. So, all right. Anyway, take care. I will see you hopefully next week or maybe later this week for episode 19 video recap. So, all right. Bye everyone.